Dear Mom and Dad, I know that you are hurting. I'm hurting too. I feel and feed off your tension, fear, and shock. Although I am young and cannot express verbally what is happening in our lives, I am still feeling the impact. My heart is broken every time I have to give up a parent. My sense of security is lost. Please don't assume that I am resilient. Please don't assume that my life will be exactly as it was, and that I will continue to feel the same love from both of you. I am a human being just like you. My needs are just like yours. I need love, attention, nurturing, stability, consistency, affection, understanding, patience, and mostly to be wanted. When you fight over me or put me in the middle of your argument, you are sending me the message that winning with each other is more important than my life. I am learning from you that it is better to be right than to be loved. You are teaching me that I came from a person who is unlovable and wrong, and that I am somehow wrong too. When you confide your hurt in my heart, you are storing up adult pain and robbing me of my childhood. You are taking away my belief that love is unconditional and replacing it with a message that tells me to become hard and not to love because I will get hurt and not be able to recover. You may not understand this today, and I am so small that you are not thinking about my future, but you are putting me at a greater risk of getting a divorce myself. At times you are risking my safety to fill a void in your heart. My safety is your job. Without you and your protection, I am unshielded from the world. This will manifest in irrational fears for me, because I will stay in a state of fight or flight for most of my life. Someday, this initial shock will wear off, but how you choose to parent me through this crisis will never wear off. I will either feel your sense of selflessness, support, protection, or I will have a scar on my heart with a message that reads, "Good things happen to good people. I must be bad." Thoughtfully, the child of divorce.
I know we don't always see kids from a divorce. We have paternity action, we have AG action, we have suit affecting parent-child, so it's not always kids of divorce. It's kids that have to go through this and they're in the middle of their parents' conflict. My name's Diane Booth. I'm a caseworker at Family Court Services. I want to thank you for being here. You've taken off work, you've taken off time at home, you may have to have someone else take your kids to school or babysit them while you're up here, but we do appreciate it. The other important thing is that you're not being punished by being here or going through our office. It's an opportunity for the judge to get to know your family a little bit better. So you've either been ordered by a court to do a custody evaluation, that's the long several months process, or a court service, which is similar to the custody evaluation, but it takes less time. We also do parenting coordination. That's the brochure that I gave you. Make sure you read that. It's a free opportunity to sit down with a caseworker to discuss your case, discuss your kiddos, and try to come up with a plan that is a positive thing for your children and for you. So we're going to talk about that this morning. Our judges, we have 14 family law judges in this building, and I know it's confusing, and I know you've probably never been through this before, but we're going to kind of help you maneuver so that you kind of know how it's going to go from here on down the road. We want to keep you out of the courtroom if we can. We want to empower our parents to make decisions about their children so that judges and social workers don't do that. You know your children better than anybody. You're parents to your children, whether you're with them or not. You're parents 24/7. If you're not with them, you're thinking about them or worried about them. So we understand that. When you go through a custody case, and that's why all of y'all are here, we have parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, other family members that are participating in some of our court actions in this building. We have 6 district judges. They each have an associate judge We have 2 attorney general judges that typically start off with the child support issues. If you've got a child and you do or you wouldn't be here, child support is going to be ordered no matter what. That's the state law. So the Attorney General's office, you either start off down there on the first floor in their courtrooms or they're involved if you're going through a divorce or a modification or a paternity action. So the judges really want to help you guys get through this process so that they don't have to hear a trial of y'all fighting over your kids. I want to make sure you know why you're here. So I'm going to mention the 3 possibilities of why you're here. Custody evaluation is going to cost you more money, so that may kind of clue you in on what you're here for. It's usually $500 a parent, or if the judge, if you're in a court that doesn't charge, they waive that fee. But it does take a longer amount of time. It involves interviews, home visits to each home, interviewing the children, interviewing any other adult that lives in your home. We have to collect collateral information on you guys, and collateral information is going to be references, school information, mental health, criminal history, CPS history, things like that. So it just takes us longer to go through that process. We usually try to talk to the attorneys when you're going through a custody evaluation so that they kind of know where we are in your custody evaluation. I know the judges right now are setting trials for 2019, and you'll be going through this process for a year if that's the case. Some of the judges can get you in a little bit sooner than that, but make sure if you have an attorney, or even if you don't, make sure you've got a trial date out there. If you're filing a lawsuit, that's the beginning, and it has to end somewhere out here. So you either have to have a trial date and you testify in a courtroom, or you have a settlement or mediation or something like that. So it can be a rather lengthy process. Our office offers mediation. You can tell your attorney about that. We even work with people who don't have an attorney in mediation. You file a lawsuit, there has to be a final order. It's either going to be an order on the suit affecting parent-child relationship, so there's going to have to be an order out there, or a divorce decree. So it can take months to get that done. Sometimes we write our custody evaluation, sometimes we don't. We can give oral reports on a custody evaluation, but sometimes the attorneys want a written report. Our hope is that you use your time with us to work with the other parent in trying to reach an agreement. We've got the parenting coordination between parents who can come in and talk to a caseworker and try to come up with a plan. I call them planning sessions, basically is what they are. Okay, I've talked about the custody evaluation. There's a payment. There's usually a fee that you have to pay, and you pay right here in the child support office, and then you're required to come here. When that has been done by both of the parties, usually it's parents, then you're going to get assigned to a caseworker. Caseworker's secretary is going to send you a letter that says, please call Diane, so that you can schedule your appointment for your interview. So those require interviews. You're going to be up here, and one of the caseworkers is going to interview you in our office. Those interviews last about 2 hours. So hurry up and pay that fee, and you've got to come here, and then you're going to get that letter. You'll come in for your interview. I do mine in the morning about 9:30. We do them in the afternoon. You're going to be signing releases. We have to have those. Some of you may have already signed some releases when you came in for intake. That's how we get school information, mental health, medical, and all of the other collateral information that I talked about a while ago. We have to have your permission to get that information, so we have you sign releases. After the interviews, all the parents have to be interviewed, and then we will interview stepmothers, stepdads, girlfriends that are boyfriends that are in the kid's life a lot, because we're doing that a lot too. They have to be interviewed as well because they're around the children a lot. If you live with any other adult in your home, you may be living with your parents, or you've got a 21-year-old brother that's living in your home, they also have to be interviewed. And I'm talking about the custody evaluation. I don't want y'all getting confused. Then we make home visits. That's usually when I interview kids, is at the home because they're more comfortable there. We come to your home. It may last an hour, may last 2 hours. It just depends on what's going on. We'll walk through your house, check the backyard. I don't look under beds or look in the refrigerator. I just want to know where your child is living. And then we'll talk to the kids. We don't ask them where they want to live. That shouldn't even be anything in their minds of, I get to pick where I'm going to live. They don't. We used to have affidavits that kids could sign. I want to live with Dad or I want to live with Mom. They don't do it anymore. Kids aren't old enough to make that decision. And we don't want that pressure on them. So mainly we talk about how's school, what's going on, would you play football or soccer, how's homework going, who helps you with homework, what are your chores. We mainly just do it to get to know each other. What's it like? What do you guys do at Mom's house? What do you do at Dad's house? And that's basically all we ask these kids. Please try not to talk about this case with your kids. They're not adults and they don't understand what's going on. It just scares them further. If you think you're having a hard time with this process, think about your children. I mean, that's what that was about. They shouldn't have that problem. They shouldn't have to deal with those issues. I don't care if your child is 2 or 16. They're scared. And they're kids. And they don't know what's going on. Some kids have never lived with parents together. If you were never married, they don't have that history. And then some kids that are coming from a divorce action that's going on right now, they have lived with both parents. They know what that's like, and all of a sudden, Dad's moved out or Mom's moved out. And it's very difficult for them. They don't understand what's going on. I think you just have to tell them, this is an adult thing. Mommy and Daddy couldn't get along anymore, and we're trying really hard to make things okay for you so that you can go back and forth between the two homes comfortably. Basically, that's what this court action anything is about. It's about how many nights in a month your kids sleep in your home. It's very simple. And y'all should have the right and the power to figure that out. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. There's different ways of splitting up possession time. We hate to call it visitation because you're not really visiting your own parent. You're just hanging out with them. But that can be decided by you guys. You have got to get along with the other parent. No name calling. Don't yell at them. Don't call them bad words. Don't criticize them. Don't talk about the lawsuit. Don't talk about custody in front of these kids. They hear you on the phone. They hear you in the car. They know what you're mad at. And they really can't handle it. Your job when that child was born was to love these kiddos, protect them, keep them safe, keep them stable in their little lives. And y'all picked each other to have a baby with. So you have to accept that responsibility from here on out. And it doesn't end when they're 18. You've got to present a united front that's respectful and cooperative. You're not going to spend that much time with each other, but in exchanges or at the parent-teachers meetings or at the soccer game or at a wedding that the kid's in and you're both going to go, behave. I mean, you're grown-ups. You have to behave in front of your children. You teach them. You are their teachers. That's how they learn how to treat each other and how they treat adults. So if you present a good, positive example, then they're going to follow that. Oh, Mom and Dad can get along. Oh, Mom and Dad said hi today and they weren't arguing. They weren't fighting. A second service that we provide is a court service. It's a shorter version of that custody evaluation. And it usually takes as little as 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. It may only include interviews. It may include interviews and a home visit. You probably got charged $50, $100, $200 that y'all both had to split. That would be the court service. We do whatever we're supposed to do, whatever the court order says. It may just be interviewing the children. It may just be interviewing mom, dad, kids, and making home visits. So you would be charged $50 for each one of those services. And then we have to report back to the judge at the next hearing. We usually just say, this is what's going on. I've met these kids. These are my concerns, or I have no concerns. Or maybe the caseworker can suggest, I think this would work for these kiddos as far as a possession schedule. Sometimes we have some serious allegations going on. We see a lot of drug history, drug abuse. alcohol abuse. We're seeing a bunch of that still. Domestic violence. If your kids have been in a home where both of y'all hurt each other, abused each other, that has left a mark on them forever. You argue in front of your child, it changes their lives forever. They've heard those mean words. So please be careful how you behave in front of your children. So the court service, I just talked about it. Lower fees, you still have to come to this. You'll get a phone call more than likely from your caseworker because you have to hurry up and get it done before the next hearing. The brochure that I handed you, and I think Brad will talk about that in a minute, it's a planning session, I said that a while ago, for mom and dad or grandparents and parents to come in and try to figure out a good possession schedule for your children. It allows you to sit down in a room with the other parent, with a caseworker who's she's not biased or anything. She's not going to take sides. But it's a time for y'all to figure it out yourselves. You know your children better than anybody. You should empower yourself to work with the other parent to come up with some kind of schedule that works for your child. Going to both homes is for your child, not for you. It's not your time. It's your kids' time. And make it a good experience for them. You can get creative as far as how much time the child stays in your home or is hanging out with you on the weekends or whatever. Standard visitation, you've probably all heard of that. They call it standard access, standard possession schedule. It's usually Friday at 6 to Sunday at 6. If you think about it, in a month, that's only 4 nights that your child is with you. It's really not a lot of time. But sometimes that works for parents. It could be a work schedule with one of the parents that just works better for. But you can expand that a little bit as long as you can make sure that child is doing whatever they can do, activities or getting them to school, that they're normally doing with the parent who the child lives with most of the time. There's expanded standard, which is Thursday, either at 6 or after school. A lot of us have you pick up kids at school because it just kind of does away with that conflict between the parents during exchanges. So if you can manage to pick your kids up at school, or can't, you can do it at 6 o'clock. Then you have them till Monday morning and you take them to school. But like I said a while ago, you got to get them to school on time. You've got to make sure that child's not stressed, that mom's not going to get me to school on Friday mornings because I'm always late when I'm with mom. You've got to get them to school. You've got to get them to a soccer practice if you've got them on Thursday afternoon. You've got to deal with the projects and the homework and the spelling tests that are on Thursday evenings. But it gives you more time with your kids. I think some of our court orders say that the child can see the dad or the mom on a Thursday from 6 to 8, which is crummy because it's homework time. And it's dinner time. Do you do homework or do you eat, you know? Sometimes you can just do that overnight on Thursday every week, and that gives that parent more time with the child. There's week on, week off. A lot of times when you file a lawsuit, everybody wants week on, week off. Well, it might work for you because you'll get to see your kids more often, but I would say most of the time it doesn't work for your kids. It's just, where am I this week? Where am I that week? Who's going to pick me up from gymnastics? It can work if parents really, really get along and cooperate and respect one another. You can do a week on, week off. But you really have to live close enough together to make sure they're where they need to be on the day that they're used to getting there. And the parents really have to get along. So that can work. So you can get creative on possession schedules, but it has to, be based on your work schedule as well. Sometimes we've got parents that cannot get that child on a week on, week off because their work hours or whatever are so unusual it doesn't work for the kids. But we're going to encourage you guys to work together. If you have started a custody evaluation and you want to go to the parenting coordination, it's free. All it takes is a 1 sheet of paper order signed by a judge, an agreement by the parties. You have to tell your attorneys that's what we've decided to do, and give it a try. At least it would let you all sit down together. This is my concern. I'm worried that you're not going to get them to school. I'm worried that instead of keeping them yourself, you're letting your girlfriend take care of them, or you're letting grandma and grandpa take care of them. but it gives you an opportunity to express concerns and try to work together. There's a data form that some of you may already have. It's 16 pages long. Does anybody have one already? If you're going to be interviewed either in the custody evaluation or the court service, if it requires an interview up here in our offices, some of you may already have those data forms. If you haven't already gotten one, we're going to be handing them out at the door. One per adult in your home. So if you're living with parents or you're living with your girlfriend or you've got a stepfather, the stepfather lives there, they have to have one too. Don't do anything with them until you're asked to come in and when you schedule your interview. So bring that with you. Okay. I think I've done everything. We're going to baby step you through this so that you'll know what's next. I think you just need to realize that we understand you're the parents and we want y'all to participate as much as you can in what happens to your kids. Judges don't like to make those decisions. Judges don't like to interview children if you think that's a good idea. Sometimes you file a motion to confer, which is an interview with the judge and your child. How scary would that be to have to even come in this building, much less sit in an office with a judge? Usually we go up there so that there's an extra person in the room during the interview. Child support, I said a while ago, is usually always ordered. Someone's going to have to pay. So don't feel like if you do a week on, week off, you don't have to pay child support. That is wrong. Someone's going to have to pay child support. The state of Texas requires that a parent pay child support. And there's also the medical insurance. You've probably heard about that. If you've got medical insurance that say mom has the kids on, she's paying that out of her paycheck. Dad may have to pay part of that to offset that. Child support's a bargain. If you've ever thought about how much it costs to raise a child in your home in a month, child support's not always for tennis shoes and clothes and school supplies. It puts a roof over your child's head, pays the utilities, so there's light in the parent's home, pays for food. And if you just divide, say a home makes $3,000 a month and there's 4 people in it, one child is 25% of those expenses, whether it's gasoline for the car or if it's clothing or whatever. And if you're paying $400 a month in child support, it doesn't come close to raising a child every day. So don't resent child support. It's not a bad thing. It's just a responsibility. You have promised your kids you're going to take care of them. So hopefully if you can take care of them and get along with the other parent, you don't have to go for coffee on a Friday, anything like that. But if you get along with them, they're going to learn. Mom and Dad can be in the same room together. You know, they're both showing up for my soccer game and they refuse to sit anywhere near each other. And they start acting up. So just pay attention to how you act in front of your kids. Brad's going to come in here and talk to you guys. You'll probably be here maybe till 10:30-ish. You can go to the bathroom. You can go pay your parking if you need to. And if you think you need one of those data forms, get one on the way out. And then that's kind of a time for questions, but try not to bog him down because I may not be out there to help him. So I'm going to leave you to Brad, and there's one more little clip that you'll see at the end that's cute as can be. And I think you'll enjoy that. Y'all have a good day.
I'm Brad Carpenter. I'm one of the caseworkers with Family Court Services. And actually, when the class is over, you didn't put the name of the child, and we need to attach that to your name, so come see me, okay? I'm one of the Family Court Services workers. There's like 15 or 16 of us. And I've been in this office doing this stuff for 28 years. I do custody evaluations, and I also do parenting coordination. And I know some of you are ordered for one of them, and some of you are ordered for the other, and there's a couple other services that our office provides as well. Let me ask by show of hands, how many of you here today are here because you have to go through a custody evaluation? Quite a few of you. Okay. All right. Part of the program here is to try to talk you out of that. And we're going to talk about why you don't want to go through that and waste to get out of this system as quickly and as inexpensively as possible. And that second part, getting out of this system as quickly and as inexpensively as possible, really pertains to all of you, okay? But Diane talked to you about personal data forms, right? The questionnaire that y'all are going to pick up on your way out, personal data forms. And make sure that you do pick those up, because you're going to need those to take home and fill out and bring back with you when you come in for your interviews. But let's talk about some legitimate reasons. And those of you that aren't going through a study or a custody evaluation right now, it doesn't mean you've escaped that fate. A lot of times what will happen is the courts will start you off with different services first. And if those different services do not succeed, then the last alternative is they're going to typically order you into a custody evaluation. So don't think that this first part doesn't pertain to you, because it very well may pertain to you at some point in the future, okay? So she talked about personal data forms. What I want to talk about are legitimate reasons to go through a custody evaluation. So if you don't fall into one of these categories, you might seriously consider some other options that we'll be talking about a little bit later. If there is abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect of a child in your home, it's a legitimate reason to go through a social study or custody evaluation. Unfortunately, that happens, but I'll tell you the other thing that I see happen quite a bit is when people are going through a custody case or a divorce, all of a sudden one parent is now suddenly being investigated by Child Protective Services. It's weird how that turns out to be such a coincidence, right? Divorce, custody, Child Protective Services. And what I can tell you, I used to work in Child Protective Services a long time ago. There are legitimate reasons to call CPS, and there's just fake reasons to call CPS. And a lot of times fake reasons are you're going through a custody case and you think, okay, it's going to help my custody case or my divorce if he or she's being investigated by CPS at the same time. What I can tell you is this. We're going to get the records from CPS, and we're going to review them as well. And if CPS or us thinks that you're just doing it to help your custody case, number one, it's not going to go anywhere with CPS, and number two, it's going to hurt you with your custody case, okay? So absolutely don't call them unless there is legitimate child abuse going on, physical abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect, okay? But if it is going on, it's a legitimate reason to call CPS, and it's a legitimate reason to go through a custody case. Parental alienation. Anyone ever heard that term before, that phrase? You know, at one point in time, it used to be called parental alienation syndrome, and it was a mental health evaluation. They've taken it out of the DSM-5, which is what psychiatrists and therapists use to diagnose people's mental health problems. And they don't believe it's a mental health issue anymore, but it is a behavioral issue. Parental alienation is where one parent is pretty much doing everything in their power to drive a wedge between that parent and the child. They say bad things about the other parent and to the other parent in front of the child. They allow their family, their new boyfriend, their new girlfriend, their new husband, their new wife, to say bad things about the other parent in front of the child. Or talk badly to the other parent in front of the child. You know, if you're calling to talk to your child at the other parent's home, and the other parent never answers the phone, or you leave messages and they never return your messages, or they pick up the phone and say, no, our child can't come to the phone right now, she's eating dinner. No, our child can't come to the phone right now, she's in the backyard playing. No, our child can't come to the phone right now, she's doing homework. If you can never reach your child at the other parent's home, it's a red flag, okay? If you're the parent that is doing that, that is trying to drive that wedge, you may not even realize that you're doing it. But if you're interfering with that other parent's ability to have a good relationship with their child, I'm telling you, your behaviors are going to come back and bite you in the butt in this building. Your child deserves to have a normal parent-child relationship with both parents. And if one of you is interfering, trust me, you're not going to like the outcome of your custody evaluation, and you're not going to like the outcome of your custody case in this building, okay? So what you need to do is turn that page. Get over your feelings towards that other parent and allow that child to have a relationship with that other parent. Don't interfere with it. But if that other parent is alienating you or attempting to alienate you from your child, it's a legitimate reason to go through a custody evaluation. Family violence, domestic violence is another legitimate reason to go through a custody evaluation. And I can tell you, that's a tough one a lot of times to deal with in our building. Because I don't know what the percentage is, but a great high percentage of family violence happens behind closed doors, no witnesses. Okay? So when you get to this building, it's a he said, she said type situation. What I can tell you is you need to get out of that situation as quickly as possible, because those can escalate to being really, really, really bad scenarios. I've had people killed on my caseload. I've had children killed on my caseload because of family violence that's been going on. So you need to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. You also, the best thing you can do is provide as much evidence to the court and to us that it has been going on. If there's been witnesses that have heard it, or seen it, if you have sought medical treatment, if you've called the police, we need all that information to verify your story. So again, if there is domestic violence going on, get out of that situation as quickly as possible. Have as much proof as possible, and it's a legitimate reason to go through a study. Substance abuse, another legitimate reason to go through a study. Let me caution you though, however, don't be the first one to go in court and cast a stone at the other parent saying, she's a drug abuser or he's a drug abuser. Because my experience, having done this as long as I have, it's very, very, very common if one parent's been using drugs, the other parent. Not always, but it's extremely common. And so if you go to court and say that the other parent's using drugs, well, our judges may order that parent to be drug tested. But you know what else the judge is probably going to order? You to be drug tested. You the person making that allegation. And here's the risk you run. If both of you test positive for anything, even marijuana, which I know is becoming less and less of a crime, more decriminalized than it used to be, but in Texas it's still a crime. We live in a very conservative state. And if both of you test positive for any illegal drugs in your system, that child is not going home with either one of you. Okay? The child is either going to be placed with a relative or placed into foster care. And I see it happen all the time. Back in the day when I first started here, we finally got out of this business, but we used to actually have our own group home that was full of kids 24/7. Judges would, as soon as both parents tested positive for drugs, the judge would order one of us to go to the house or school, wherever, pick up that child and bring that child to our group home. And that child would stay there for sometimes months, sometimes years, until one of the parents got their act straightened up. We don't run a group home anymore, but CPS is still in business, and so our judges will do that. They'll say, okay, if there's not a legitimate good placement for this child, you go to, they call CPS, CPS goes to the school and picks up your child and places them in foster care. It still happens. So, and here's the thing. I mean, there's 2 labs just right down the street from us, within walking distance, easy walking distance. And so if that allegation is made, you're going to go and the other parent's going to go. And you're going to go that day. And you're going to here's the thing about drug testing. at least 3 different ways that they can drug test you. They can make you do a urine test, so you get to urinate in a cup in front of someone else, you know, one of the staff members at the lab, so that they make sure it's your urine. Well, that's not embarrassing at all, is it? They can do a fingernail test. It goes back a little bit further, either fingernails or toenails. Or they can do a hair follicle test. So even if you're follically challenged like I am, they can take hair from other body parts, okay? And if you don't think that's embarrassing, you know, I don't know what to say about it. But each of those tests costs money, various amounts of money depending on the type of test. And guess who pays for those tests? Not me, not our office, not the courts. You pay for it. Alcohol's another one. It's considered a substance abuse as well. And our judges can, if there's an allegation that someone's abusing alcohol, they can make them go down to one of those labs and actually put on an ankle monitor. And that ankle monitor costs X amount of money every day that you wear it, but it tests the amount of alcohol that that person is consuming on a regular basis, okay? And again, if the judge feels that there's alcohol abuse, that child's not going home with you. So if there is drug or alcohol abuse, it's a legitimate reason to go through a custody evaluation, but what I will tell you is, don't make that allegation against the other parent unless you're clean. Because if you're not clean and the other parent tests dirty, you're losing your kid temporarily at least, okay? Another reason to go through a social study or custody evaluation is mental illness. And I'll tell you, that's such a broad subject. You don't know how many times when I've been interviewing people, and I'll ask mom or dad, well, why do you think the other parent shouldn't have custody? Well, because she's crazy. Okay? What do you mean she's crazy? Well, she's on medication, she's seeing a therapist, she's under the care of a psychiatrist. Okay, guess what? My experience, having done this as long as I have, a lot of times the person that's on medication, in counseling, under the care of a psychiatrist, is in better health than the parent that's not doing those things. So just because someone's on medication, going to a therapist, under the care of a psychiatrist, doesn't mean that they're crazy or doesn't mean that they're dangerous to the child. You better come up with more evidence than that, okay? The concerns I have are the people that should be on medication or have been prescribed medication or should be in counseling or should be under the care of a psychiatrist and are not taking their meds or not going to counseling. Those are the people that concern me and that I'm going to have some issues about and have to do a real thorough investigation on. Move-away cases. It's another legitimate reason to go through a custody investigation. I like to travel, and we live in a very mobile society these days. So I'm not the only caseworker, but I'm the primary caseworker that gets our travel cases. And by that, what I mean is, one parent typically still lives here in the Fort Worth or Tarrant County area, and one parent has moved away, whether it's to Austin, San Antonio, Florida, Alaska. And so, as a matter of fact, already this year I've made a trip to Florida on a case. Next month I'm going to New Mexico and to Illinois. I'm seeing 2 different families in New Mexico, 2 different families in Illinois. It's not unusual for people, one person or the other, to move away. But what I can tell you is this. Our courts make it extremely difficult for you to stay away, okay? And here's what I mean by that. In your final orders, even in a lot of temporary orders, there's one sentence, and in a final order, it's easily overlooked because your final order can be 30, 40, 80 pages long. But that one sentence will say that the child's primary domicile is restricted to Tarrant County or a contiguous county. Contiguous is a fancy word that means a county that touches Tarrant County. So, If that's in your orders, that means your child cannot move outside of Tarrant County, Dallas County, Denton County, Parker County, or Johnson County until that child turns 18. Okay? You can move, but your child can't. And so if a parent decides to move away with the child, it's a legitimate reason to go through a custody evaluation. And in many, many cases, when it's all said and done, the child or children are ordered to move back here. Not in every case, but in a high percentage of cases. I can tell you a couple stories about move away here real quick that have happened on my caseload. I had a client call me one time and she said, Brad, you can close the case now because I'm moving away with my kid. And I'm going, well, that's just the opposite. That's a reason to continue for the other parent to go through with this custody evaluation. I said, why are you moving? Hand on a Bible, I swear. She said, well, I met the love of my life last night on the internet, and I'm moving to Chicago with my kids. And so I looked through her data form, the form that y'all are going to have to fill out, and I counted. This was the 6th love of her life. So what do you think the likelihood is of that relationship working out, number one? What kind of danger is she placing herself and her kids in by moving in with some guy that she doesn't even know? I said, you can move, but I don't think the judge is going to let your kids move. And of course, as soon as she tried to move, Dad and his attorney brought it back to court on an emergency hearing, and the judge said, congratulations, I hope this relationship is the one that works out for you, but your kids are going to stay here with the other parent. Had another one where the guy had, the couple had 3 kids. And the guy said, Brad, you can stop the study because I'm moving. I got a job promotion to Washington, D.C., and I'm going to be making twice as much money in Washington, D.C., so I'm taking the boys with me. And I said, dude, that's not a reason to move away. That's a reason for the mom to go through with the custody evaluation. He said, Brad, isn't this about the best interests of kids? He said, you can't tell me that me getting a job promotion is not better for my kids. Better neighborhood, better schools, better everything for my kids. I said, I understand your argument, but the bigger argument is this. Their mom lives here, and their mom deserves to have a good relationship with her kids, just like you do. And as soon as you move away with your kids, it negatively impacts her ability to maintain that good relationship with their kids. Now, kind of an aside and almost beside the point was this. The guy already lived in a great neighborhood, made a lot of money here, and lived in Colleyville. Kids went to Colleyville schools. So how much better they were going to have it there, I don't really know. And so the mom had an emergency hearing, took the case to court, and exactly what happened in that first case with the mom that met the boyfriend on the internet happened in this case. The judge said, congratulations on your job promotion. You know that extra money you're making? You're now going to be using that to fly your 3 boys back and forth to see you because they're going to stay here with mom. Well, both of them felt like it was unfair to them for the judge to make that type of decision. Here's what you need to know. Regardless of why you're going through a custody evaluation, when it gets to this point that you're in our building, this no longer is about you. You might want to try to make it about you or about him or her. It's about your kids and what people in this building think is in the best interest of your kids. Another reason to go through a custody evaluation is sometimes we have to have grandparents step in. If you're a grandparent, and I'll tell you that's becoming more and more common, a more and more common occurrence than it used to be, where we'll have grandparents file an intervention. And I'll tell you the reason that it happens a lot of the time is because we've got both parents that are in this love-hate relationship. They really can't separate completely from each other, and there's a lot of domestic violence going on. Judges don't want kids growing up in that situation, so a grandparent will step in and the grandparent will get temporary custody. Sometimes we have both parents that have struggling with drug and alcohol problems, and so we'll have a grandparent step in. Sometimes we have both parents that are incarcerated, and we'll have a grandparent step in. If you're a grandparent, here's what you need to know. When you step in, the thought process for the courts is that you are a temporary placement for that child. Now, temporary I use very loosely, because temporary may be that the children are with you for a few months, maybe a few years, maybe the rest of their childhood. But if one of the parents, even if it's not your kid, if you're the grandparent, even if it's not your child, it might be your ex-son-in-law or your ex-daughter-in-law. If they get their act together and they bring that case back to court, the way the laws are written in Texas, they heavily favor biological parents over anybody else. And so if one of those parents gets their act together 3 months from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, chances are very high that that child is going to go back and live with their biological parent. So it's not that you did anything wrong, it's that you're not that child's parent. And what you did, you needed to do. You needed to step in and act as that child's parent for X amount of time. But keep in mind, it should be a temporary placement. So those are all legitimate reasons to go through a custody evaluation. If those of you that raise your hands, if your situation doesn't fall in one of those categories, seriously reconsider the route that you're taking. And we're going to talk about some alternatives at the very end here. Let's talk about the impact of litigation, the impact of divorce, the impact of splitting up, how it affects your kids. And there's been tons and tons and tons of research on it. And across the board, the research says this: children whose parents are going through a divorce, children whose parents have split up, children whose parents are going through litigation, those children, now your children, because you're here, now run a higher risk of running away from home, of dropping out of school, of getting involved in illegal drug usage, having an early pregnancy, getting involved in juvenile delinquent behaviors, having a lower educational level than their peers whose parents aren't going through this, have lower paying jobs than their peers who aren't going through this, and typically have more failed relationships as adults than their peers who have not gone through this. So, because you're going through this now, your kids are at a higher risk for one or more of those behaviors than before this process started. That doesn't mean your kids are going to do any of those things, but statistically, they are now at a higher risk for every one of those behaviors than they were before this process started. And some of you are thinking, oh, Brad, that might be true for a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 17-year-old kid. No, I'm talking to every single one of you, even those of you that have infants. And you're going, well, my infant's not going to get pregnant. My infant's not going to run away from home. You're right. They're not going to right now. But what I want to do is I want to do a comparison here. What you're doing in your child's life right now is you're setting your child's emotional foundation. And an emotional foundation is real similar to a house foundation. And in Texas, if you live in Texas, you cannot avoid advertisements for foundation repair. They're on TV all the time, they're on the radio all the time, you see them in the paper if you get the paper, for foundation repair. And here's what's happening. When you guys are yelling and cussing and fussing at each other, flipping each other off, calling each other names, you're creating minute, invisible, finite little cracks in your child's emotional foundation right now. And just like a house foundation, you don't know that you have a foundation problems until those cracks become evident, right? Till they're visible. You might have doors that don't open and shut right, windows that don't open and shut right. You start getting cracks in your walls or ceilings. I've dealt with foundation problems in my house, so I know how that goes. It's the same thing with your kids. As your kids age, those finite, almost invisible little cracks continue to get worse, to the point that when they're old enough to start acting out on those behaviors, that's when you see the running away from home, dropping out of school, that type of thing. So, one of the things you're going to hear me talk about, your caseworker in family court services talk about, if you have an attorney, you're going to hear them talk about it, and you're going to hear the judge talk about it, the judge on your case, and that is something called co-parenting. And I'll tell you, it's probably the number one thing that you're going to be assessed on is your ability or your inability to co-parent appropriately with that other parent. So this is probably one of the most important things I'm going to talk about with you today. Co-parenting. Because the worse you two co-parent, the more cracks you're causing in your child's emotional foundation. Okay? Co-parenting. What is co-parenting? When I say that word co-parenting, what I'm talking about is your ability to interact, communicate appropriately with that other parent about your kids. Who, what, when, where, and why about your kids. And I'm telling you, co-parenting can be very difficult for people. And part of the reason is this. You're changing your role in your relationship with that other parent. You're moving from what was once an intimate, romantic and sexual relationship to now what needs to be a business relationship. And that's a difficult transition, more difficult for some people than others. Business relationship is where you need to head to. Business relationship is how do both of you, your jobs, how do you raise your kids as a family when you're now living in two separate homes and you hate each other's guts and you're not talking to each other, or the only form of communication you have is yelling, cussing, and fussing, flipping each other off, peeling out of the driveway, hanging up in the middle of a conversation. What I'm telling you is the more that you are doing that, the less you are co-parenting. And when I hear that stuff in my office, and I find out that it's true, you're not going to like my recommendation about you. Okay? I don't expect, I understand. You guys are going through a bitter custody battle or maybe a bitter divorce. I don't expect you to be best friends. Okay? I get that. I went through a divorce before. Almost all of us in our office have been divorced, so we all have some personal experience with it. So I get it. I don't expect you to be a best friend with that other person. I don't expect you to celebrate holidays together. I don't expect you to take vacations together. But what I do expect you to be able to do is communicate appropriately with each other who, what, when, where, and why about your kids. So let's put that at a realistic level. You know, if your child comes home to you today with a report card and the report card is excellent, or horrible, you snap a picture of it and you send it to mom that day. Good, bad, or ugly. That's a start of good communication. You're letting her know. Here, you know, whether your child is doing great or not doing so great. And if the child is not doing so great, you two need to talk to each other. What do we need to do to help our child improve his or her math grade? Should we look at Sylvan? Should we look at tutoring? What do we need to do? Should we have a parent-teacher conference? This, again, is not about you guys anymore. It's about your kids. That's good co-parenting. If your child is sick, or actually, let's say your child during your period of possession falls and splits her lip open. Well, you don't wait until you bring the child back to mom and mom sees the stitches in her lip. Soon as it happens, you're calling mom and saying, hey, she tripped over the rug and fell into the coffee table and split her lip open. I'm taking her to the ER right now, and she's probably going to get some stitches. That's good co-parenting. Even not emergencies. You've got a child, and your child went to the dentist 3 months ago, but she's got another appointment coming up. Well, as soon as you know when that appointment is, you let mom know. So mom has the right to be there. She might not be there, but at least she knows. She's in the loop. If your kids are involved in extracurricular activities, sports, whatever it may be, let me talk about that for a quick second. Number one, never, never, never enroll your kid in an extracurricular activity until you both are on board with it. Okay? So if your child comes home to you today and says, Mommy, I really want to play soccer. Well, don't say yes or no to her. Say, hey, let me talk to your dad first. Okay? And I'll tell you how come. Because sports like that, practices, games, whatever, I promise you some of those are going to fall during that other parent's periods of possession. Okay? And if the other parent isn't on board with it, chances are that other parent isn't going to take the child to their games or their practices. And how does sports work? The older a child gets, if you don't practice, you don't play. Thank you. Right? So, let's say the other parent wasn't on board with it, didn't take her to practices, and now they have their first game, and the team doesn't have enough players to form a team, so they have to forfeit the game. Do you know which child on the team is now hated by every other kid on their team? Your kid. Did your kid have any say-so in not going to those practices? No. Now, if you've got a co-parent that simply is refusing to co-parent with you, you can bring a situation like that to court. And I've actually seen court orders. Now, these are for high conflict families. These are for families that don't co-parent well with each other. But I've actually seen judges put in court orders. Mom, you get to pick extracurricular activities for your child spring and fall. Dad, you get to pick them summer and winter. Okay? And then both of you are obligated. And I can tell you, I've seen people, they haven't let go of the fight with the other person. And so what they do is they still try to figure out ways to screw over the other person. Mom may live in Mansfield and Dad lives in Saginaw. And Dad's still mad at Mom about having an affair with his best friend. And that's the reason they're splitting up. And so Dad says, all right, my daughter hasn't even asked me about soccer, but I know that there's a soccer league forming, and I'm going to enroll her without talking to Mom about it. Because I know that Mom likes to sleep in on her weekends that our daughter's not with her. And I know that some of those games are like 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning up in Saginaw. And so on the weekend, she's got our daughter. If she wants to look like a good mom, guess what she's going to have to do? She's going to have to get her butt out of bed super, super early and drive all the way up to Saginaw, right? And if she doesn't do that, she's going to look like a bad mommy. And so Mom goes, that SOB, he's still jacking with me and now we're divorced. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to enroll our daughter in karate down in Mansfield. She's never chopped a board in half in her life. But I'm going to set it up so that Dad's going to have to drive his butt all the way down there. Do you think we don't see those types of behaviors? I see it all the time. And if you're the parent doing that, do you think my recommendation is going to be good for you or not so good for you? Okay? You two need to be on the same page with each other as much as possible. Co-parenting, communicating who, what, when, where, and why. And I'll tell you another reason it's so important. Your sweet little angel with the big brown eyes and the long eyelashes, just doesn't do anything wrong in your eyes right now. They are also, I hate to say this, some of you, I'm going to break some news that you've never heard before. Your kids can also be manipulative little devils. And the older they get, the better they get at it. And so if you two aren't communicating as good co-parents, who, what, when, where, and why about your kids, you're throwing those doors wide open for your kids to step through and make one stupid, in a flash, bad decision that can now have lifelong lasting consequences on you and your kid. early pregnancy. You want to be a grandparent at 36 years old? I see them. I see kids that run away from home and are never found again, or are found dead. Why? A lot of times because we don't have parents that are communicating with each other who, what, when, where, and why about their kids. You know, if your kid tells you, hey, I'm going over to John's house tonight, and, you know, mom better know that the kid's going over to John's house too, and you might want to check with John's parents to make sure your kid's there. Why? Not because you don't trust your kid, but because you love your kid. And you want to make sure that they're at where they're at. You know where most teenagers think they get their best advice, don't you? Their friends. And so your 14-year-old daughter, you know, she thinks that you're probably the stupidest person that walks the face of the earth. And her 14-year-old friend is who she seeks her advice from. And of course, her 14-year-old friend has so much more worldly experience, right, than you do. Even though you've got the t-shirt that says, been there, done it, right? You've got to protect your kids at every single age through their childhood. And one of the ways to set that safety net of protection is by communicating with the other parent what your kid's doing, who they're with, when they're going to be there, and when they're going to be home. Okay? That's all good co-parenting. One of the researchers about co-parenting was a woman by the name of Judith Wallerstein. And she actually wrote a big, long book about co-parenting and the impact of divorce and custody on children. And she followed children, I think it was a 20-year longitudinal study, which meant that she had a group of kids, let's say this side was kids whose parents were going through a divorce or custody battle, and then she maintained contact with another set of children whose parents hadn't gone through that stuff. And she followed them for 20 years. So and they were all different age kids. So some of them were in their late 20s or mid-20s. Some of them were in their 40s, almost middle age by the time this study was done. And this study has since been replicated by other people. But what she found was this. And this might be the second most important thing I talk about today. She found a lot of the same things that I said before. Kids whose parents had gone through what you guys are going through typically had more failed relationships, less of an educational level than these other kids. More of them had run away from home, dropped out of school, all that stuff. But she was the first one to find this out, that the higher the level of conflict there was between the parents, the more emotional damage was done to the child. So personalize that to your situation again. The more that you two are yelling, cussing, and fussing at each other, flipping each other off, calling each other names, peeling out of the driveway at exchanges, hanging up in the middle of telephone conversations with each other, sending horrible texts to each other that your kids, trust me, they can get access to and see, the more that you are emotionally damaging your child. And you might think, oh no, it's just always her starting the argument, or it's always him starting the argument. Chances are some of the times it's her or him, and some of the times it's you. You can't control what the other person does or says, but you can control what you say or do. And so this is to every single one of you. Regardless of how that other person is talking to you, about you, or treating you, it doesn't matter. What matters is how you react to it. Okay? My goal is that both of you start co-parenting and treating each other in a respectful manner. That's the ideal, that both of you step up to the plate and do that. But if I can't get both of you to do it, if at least one of you starts doing that, now I've got a child that can see at least one parent doing the right thing, co-parenting the right way, rather than both parents continuing to co-parent the wrong way. Okay? Going back to manipulation, you know, it's on Me TV now, but Leave It to Beaver, anyone even know what I'm talking about? The old Leave It to Beaver show? All right, well, let's go back to kids being manipulative. You know, let's say mom's a stay-at-home mom. That doesn't happen hardly anymore, but let's just pretend you're a stay-at-home mom. and your beautiful 4-year-old daughter, it's a couple minutes till 5 o'clock, and she looks up at you with her big brown eyes, batting her eyelashes, her sad little angelic face, saying, "Mommy, I'm starving. Can I have a cookie?" And Mom looks at the clock and says, "Hey, Dad's going to be home in just a couple minutes. We're going to sit down and eat dinner." Well, here's how manipulation with young children can start. Dad walks in the door 5 minutes later. You know what the very first question is out of your angel's mouth is to Dad, don't you? "Can I have a cookie?" And if Dad is not privy to that conversation that happened 5 minutes ago and says, "Sure, honey, go ahead and have a cookie," your 4-year-old just orchestrated World War III in your house. Right? That's at 4. Do you think they get better at that as they get older? Absolutely. They become master manipulators by the time they're in their teens. So co-parenting is such a key here. Talking to each other in an appropriate manner. Who, what, when, where, and why about your kids. Keeping each other involved in the loop of your kids' lives. And you don't do it because you're still in love with him or her, or you don't do it because you hate him or her's guts. You both do it because you love your kids. And if you can put that as your number one goal, trust me, your kids are going to have a lot less emotional impact from what you're going through now than if you two continue to fight, fuss, and yell and scream at each other. And let me increase that circle of responsibility. It's not just what you two do as co-parents, but one of the things that I look at too is who are you bringing into your kids' lives? Your new boyfriends, your new girlfriends, your new husbands, your new wives, your family members, your brothers, your sisters, your parents. You know how they say blood's thicker than water, right? Well, if your family or your new boyfriend or new girlfriend is trashing the other parent or treating that other parent disrespectfully in front of your child, you're now allowing that person to emotionally damage your kid. I had a client, I've had some weird cases. Had a client one time doing the custody evaluation, and it was a weird kind of deal. This one was a mom who worked, but her live-in boyfriend was kind of like Mr. Dad, right? He was staying at home watching her kids. Well, I don't know if you know where the story's going, but I did a custody evaluation on him. He had a CPS investigation for sexual assault of children that she didn't know about. So I made her aware of it immediately. And she, of course, freaks out in my office, which is a normal, good reaction. But a week later, they were still together, and he was still babysitting her kids. And I said, "What's going on with that?" And she said, "I talked to him about it. He said he's changed. I feel that my kids are safe in his care." Well, guess where those kids ended up? With the dad, and she got supervised visits. Because it's not about her or her relationship with her new boyfriend. It's about the safety of those kids and what's in the best interest of those kids. So again, I tell people this. A new boyfriend or a new girlfriend or a new husband or a new wife, they cannot help you win custody of your kids. But you darn well better be sure, absolutely positively sure, that they can help you lose custody of your kids. So you better start thinking about who you're bringing into your kids' lives. I'm doing a custody evaluation right now. And it's real interesting because the parents have been split for, I think the kid is 9. They've been split since the child was 3. They co-parented great, absolutely great. This April, Dad got married for the first time. Guess what? That co-parenting relationship has gone out the window. Well, what's the variable? The new wife. And I don't want to pick on women because I see it happen with guys too. Or with women picking, the new guy. And this one I'm picking on the guy, really, because the person that he married feels like she has to put her 2 cents in and wants to be like a third parent. Well, the way I look at it is this. The people that should be parenting this kid are the ones that were there to make the kid. Okay? She wasn't there to make that kid. Should she maybe have a little bit of say-so? I don't know. Courts don't give them any say-so. None. Because statistically, any marriage after the first marriage, these are horrible statistics. 50% of all first marriages end in divorce. Did you know that? It's like 66 1/3 up to 75% of all second marriages end in a divorce. So a second marriage has a higher risk of running into a divorce than the first one. So the chances that this woman's going to be there for the long term on this kid are pretty slim. And if nothing else, she is definitely messing up the co-parenting relationship. And so that it's hurting the dad in this custody evaluation. So be very careful about who you bring into your kids' lives. If you've had to temporarily move home and live with your parents, and your parents are now dogging the other parent, saying what a bad mom she is or what a bad dad she is, and you're allowing your parent to do that, you're allowing your parent to emotionally damage your child, their grandchild. Do you think that's going to help you in your custody evaluation or hurt you in your custody evaluation? So think about that. If you end up going through a custody evaluation, at some point, if your kids are old enough, I'm going to be interviewing them. I typically try to interview them twice, once privately at mom's home and once privately at dad's home. Some of my coworkers just interview kids once and they go to the school and try to meet them on a neutral location. But I like to get two stories from kids, what they say at mom's house, what they say at dad's house, because sometimes it differs. And that's important for me to know what those differences are. But when I go in and interview your kids, it's not like I say, okay, I've got 2 minutes, kid, tell me, you want to live with mom or dad? I don't do that. I don't even put your kids in that position to have to choose one of you over the other. I talk about what's going on in dad's house, what's going on in mom's house. I want a photograph of what life is like here and what life is like there. If I asked your kids who they wanted to live with, I put them right in the middle of having to choose one parent over the other. And I'll tell you, my experience, again, having done this as long as I have, your kids love both of you. They want to have a good, normal relationship with both of you. And so by them picking one of you over the other, they feel like they've stabbed the other parent in the back. The interesting thing is this. A lot of times with especially younger kids, they want to stay right in the middle. They want to stay out of the line of gunshot between the two parents. Older kids, it's not unusual at all for older kids, if you have older kids, to have an opinion about it. Even though I don't ask them, they volunteer. Mr. Brad, I definitely want to live with my mom. Or Mr. Brad, I definitely want to live with your dad. And if they volunteer it, I'll ask why. And a lot of times, that child is mad at that other parent for something. I don't know what. It's all different range of reasons. But what I have also learned is this. Your child's anger towards you or that other parent is masking, it is hiding their hurt. Because even that child would prefer to have a normal parent-child relationship with the parent they're mad at. They just don't know how to get there. They're stuck at point A, and they don't know how to get to point B. So I don't ask kids that. And again, I try to find out, it's real interesting. Sometimes icebreaker questions. I'll ask kids, I'll explain what my role is. I'm a social worker. Have you ever heard of what a social worker is? Here's the different kinds of social workers. I work for a bunch of judges. Do you know what a judge is? Explain what the role of a judge is. And I tell them, your mom and dad are disagreeing about some things right now. And your mom wants you to live mostly with her, and your dad wants you to live mostly with him. And so what I'm trying to find out is what your life is like in mom's home and what your life is like at dad's home, how mom and dad are communicating with each other, that type of thing. And so an icebreaker question sometimes after that is I say, if you could have 3 wishes, what would you wish for? And the number one wish, I don't know if you know this, the number one wish across the board is I wish my parents would get back together. Now, you may know that that's not possible. Based on what's happened in your relationship, you're not getting back with him or her. You know what their number 2 wish is? I wish my parents would stop fighting with each other. I covered that earlier. You all have a role to play in that. You can't control what the other person says to you, how they treat you, how they talk about you. But you can control how you talk to the other parent, how you talk about the other parent, and how you treat that other parent. Trust me, your kids see a lot more and hear a lot more than what you think. You know, one of the things I tell people, when you're going through what you're going through, you may not realize it, but your kids have developed a couple superpowers that you don't know about. They now have like supersonic hearing and X-ray vision. They see stuff that you don't think they see. They see that sneaky little flip off as you're leaving the other parent, you know, dropping that kid off and leaving them with that other parent. They see that, and they tell me about it. Your cell phone can be your absolute worst enemy, especially Bluetooth cell phone. Your kid you may be picking your kid up from school and driving them home, and they've got their earbuds in listening to whatever they're listening to these days. And the other parent calls you on the phone. The soon as now you may be trying to have a conversation with your child and they go, huh, what? Because they're trying to listen to whatever they're listening to. As soon as that other parent calls and they realize it's the other parent, they're going to hear that whole conversation. If you are smart enough and take it off Bluetooth, they're still going to hear every word of your end of that conversation. If you're at home, you might have a 16-year-old boy and you've told him he's playing Xbox. You've told him 6 times to take the garbage out. Has the garbage moved an inch? No. Then the other parent calls, and you're smart enough to leave the living room where your kid's playing the Xbox, and you go into the kitchen, and you think you're having this private conversation. Folks, that's where that supersonic hearing kicks in. They're going to hear every word of your conversation. Now let me go back to something. I talk about good co-parenting and talking appropriately with that other parent and about that other parent. I'm not expecting y'all to be perfect. And I'm also not expecting you to brush your feelings towards that other parent under the rug. I think there are appropriate times and places where you can totally diss that other parent. But it's when your kid is not in your home. Okay, when your child is with the other parent, and that other parent has really done some boneheaded thing, you call your support group, your friends, your family, whoever, or at your house or apartment. You talk to them about it. I cannot believe he did that. He is such a stupid idiot. That's not hurting your kid. That's allowing you to vent your feelings. I don't have a problem with that at all, okay? Because your kid cannot be privy to it at that point in time. It's just you and your support person, okay? So you don't have to be perfect, but you got to maybe be better than what you're doing now. Take that next step. Take a step up from where you're at. If you're having difficulty with it, again, think about it this way. I'm doing it because it's for the best for my kid. I don't want to do it. I'd rather cut his brake lines and hope he drives off a cliff, but I know that this is what's best for my kid right now. What time we got here? Okay. Let me switch gears for a second. I want to talk about, and you know, we're here till 10:45, and I got to tell you folks, last week I think, what time did I let them out? 10:25? So like 20 minutes early. And someone wrote on there, it so pissed me off, someone said, he needs to stick to the topic so we can get out on time. Going, what the hell? I let you out 20 minutes early and you're griping that I kept you late because I got off top. Whatever. Yeah, exactly. And actually, on that custody evaluation, it asks for our names. If you don't remember, Diane and Brad, okay? So, and if you write bad stuff about me, I will hunt you down, track you down. No, I'm kidding. You don't worry about it. I'll just talk about you next week that you wrote something bad about me. No. So anyways, let's talk about the role of attorneys, because here's the whole purpose of this class, really, is to educate you some about personal data forms, custody evaluations, and basically the impact of divorce and custody on your kids, and then last but most importantly in my mind, how to get from point A, which is where you're at today, to point B, which is completely out of this system. as quickly and as inexpensively as possible. So let's start talking a little bit about that. And I'll get you out of here before 10:45, I think.
Right. So are court services, is that like a lesser
It is.
invasive process?
Yeah, it's a quick in and out, bam situation. Sometimes it can be this. Thank you for asking that. Court service is not a full-blown custody evaluation. It may be that the judge, maybe the other parent has alleged that there's drugs and guns all over your house. The judge can say, Brad, I want you to go over to his house right now. You follow him home, and you walk through his house. You open drawers, you open fridges, you look under the bed, and you see if there's guns and drugs there. That can be a court service, okay? It can be more involved than that, but a lot of times it's that kind of stuff, okay? Let's talk about attorneys for a second. Any of you attorneys? Doggone it. Okay, well, I have some attorneys that are really, really close friends, and there's some that when I see them walking down the street, I'll purposely cross the street because I don't want to talk to them, you know? They come from all walks of lives. There's good ones, there's bad ones, there's some in the middle. What I can tell you is they're all expensive. Let's talk about fees for just a second. Legal. Well, actually, let me say this first of all. What I'll tell you is this. When you're going through what you're going through in this building, you're in a much better position to have an attorney represent you than you representing yourself. I'll tell you that right off the bat, okay? And I'll tell you why, too. Attorneys have experience dealing with this stuff. You don't, you know? It's like a doctor. You know, does a doctor perform an operation on themselves? No, they don't. They hire another professional to do it because that professional knows what they're doing. And it's kind of the same with attorneys. Attorneys have experience. They have, you know, they've been through this process before. They know the judges like you don't know the judges. And they know, we've got 14 different judges in here, 14 totally different personalities. So an attorney knows, here's what you do and don't do in this court, here's what you do and don't do or talk about in this court, you know, and it's important to know that stuff. And you guys just aren't in the position to do that, to know that information. But, like I said, attorneys are ridiculously expensive. In Tarrant County, the average rate, hourly rate, is $300 to $350 an hour. That's pretty much the average, unless you go to a final trial. If you go to a final trial, a lot of attorneys raise their fees to about $500 an hour. I don't know if you knew that or not. And most attorneys, the way attorneys work is, you know, you'll call one or two or three of them up and they'll say, oh yeah, come on in, we'll have a free consultation. And you tell them a little bit about your case, and the attorney's going, All they're thinking about is, okay, if you want to hire me, here's how much you have to pay me for a retainer, right? And that retainer can be any amount of money. It could be $1,000, could be $10,000 or more. What you may not realize about attorneys is this. Most, if not all of them, do something that's called quarterly hour billing, okay? They bill in quarterly hour increments. So, my worst subject, and if it wasn't for my best friend Don Hawley, I'd still be stuck in 6th grade because I cannot do math. Thank God there's calculators. I need some help with a math problem. Let's say your attorney bills you $300 an hour, okay? Some of your attorneys today are going to call my receptionist, Stacy, just to see whether or not you made it to the orientation class today. She's going to look on that sign-in list and say yes or no and hang up. That was a 5-second phone call that you just got billed 1/4 of $300, which equals what? 75? Is that right? I don't know. You could say 705 and I wouldn't know. Okay, $75. Can you see where whatever that amount of retainer is that you paid up front can get blown through real quickly? And it's not unusual at all for people to still not have their custody case concluded or their divorce finalized and you've used all your retainer money. And then if you want to continue to have an attorney represent you, you know what you got to do, don't you? Pay them more money. I had 2 clients years ago, and I don't ask this question. They both volunteered. It was interesting how similar they were in a lot of ways because I don't ask this question. But they both volunteered it. And mom said, well, you know, I've paid my attorney $50,000 and we're still in the middle of this custody evaluation. Dad came in for his interview after mom, and he said, you know, I've paid my attorney $50,000 and we're still not even halfway through this whole process. I had a client come in one time. Now, he was wealthy, and so it didn't make a big deal to him other than he volunteered the information. It made a big deal to me. He said, I've paid my attorney $210,000, and we're not done with this yet. Huh? Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, and so I tell people, you know, truly, when you two are litigating and you're fighting with each other, it's typically because you're not co-parenting very well with each other. And the more you two fight, the more money they make. You know, truly, the only real winners that leave this building? Yeah, your attorneys. I'm telling you, this is the biggest money-sucking building in Tarrant County. As soon as you walk in here, you can just start feeling the money coming out of your pockets and wallets and purses. And you're paying my salary. Thank you all very much, okay? But it's true. And the sad thing is this. Your attorney is in it for a job. 3 years from now, you might be walking down the street and you see your attorney. Chances are your attorney won't know who the heck you are because you were a client to them. But you know who you will know if you see 3 years down the street, or 3 years down the road walking across the street. You'll know that other parent. You will always know that other parent. The rest of your lives, you'll always know that other parent. So, what I'm going to tell you is this. In spite of how much it costs you, when you're going through what you're going through, I'm going to tell you from my perspective, you're in a better position when you have an attorney. Not having an attorney, in my opinion, it's like going in a title heavyweight boxing match against Muhammad Ali when he was in his prime, and you've got both hands tied behind your back. That's what it's like not having an attorney represent you. The reason most people, those of you that don't have attorneys, typically the number one reason is I can't afford it. I get it. I completely get it. I don't want to pay someone $350 an hour, or what was it, $75 for 5 seconds worth of work. I don't want to pay that kind of money. That's crazy. And I get it. And in my opinion, I do think that's crazy. I think that money's much better spent on your kids than on your attorneys. And you're paying your attorneys electric bills and gas bills and their paralegal bills and helping send them on vacation while you're struggling to figure out how you're going to put food on the table for your kids next week. I get it. So what you need to understand, I'm not here to diss attorneys. I know it sounds like I am, but I really am not. I really do think you should have an attorney when you're going through this process. But here's what most people don't get. When you hire an attorney, and if an attorney ever sees this on videotape, they're all going to sue me. So we need to edit this part. They work for you. Let me get that right. Your attorney works for you. You are their employer. They are your employee. Don't ever lose sight of that relationship that you have with your attorney, okay? And if what your goal is to get out of this building as quickly and as inexpensively as possible, that's exactly what your attorney should be doing for you. And you need to sometimes help your attorney understand that, okay? Because trust me, they're in a weird position. A lot of attorneys, good ones, do want to help you settle your case as quickly and as inexpensively as possible, on the one hand. But on the other hand, the longer this case goes on, the more money they make, right? They're in a really weird position. But it's your money. So you just have the one hand. Get me the heck out of here as quickly and as inexpensively as possible. Let me tell you, the number one way to do that is to start picking your battles with that other person, picking your fights very carefully. What may be important to you may be pretty insignificant to the judge. I'll tell you another one that is interesting, and I have this happen every single year. In what's called the Texas Standard Possession Schedule, any of you ever heard that phrase, Texas Standard Possession Schedule? It's not unusual for one parent or the other to get the child for 30 days in the summertime. Every single year, I've got at least one case where one of the parents has had a little boy for 30 days, and the little boy goes back to the other parent a week before school starts, and that little boy comes back to that other parent with a buzz haircut. And that parent that child comes back to freaks out. And again, do we have parents that are co-parenting and communicating with each other? No. We just have parents that we know what's going to aggravate the other parent, and that's one way to do it. So that other parent gets PO'd about it, calls their attorney and says, I want to take him to court or her to court for that haircut. And so, I'm not kidding, folks. This happens I've been here almost 30 years. It happens every single year. It's going to happen every single year that I'm here. And so, now that $8 haircut, when you bring it to court, it's going to cost each of you $3,000 probably in attorney fees. Folks, if that's what you're bringing each other to court for, I'm telling you, you need some mental health treatment. That's a crazy thing to fight about. That hair's going to, well, usually that hair's going to grow back, okay? It's not a permanent, it's not like you're getting a Mike Tyson tattoo across your face, okay? It's going to grow back. If anything, that money is probably better spent on y'all getting some family counseling to learn how to better co-parent and communicate with each other and not use your child as a weapon against each other. Okay? So pick your battles carefully. You know, I'll have people that will be, remember, $300, $350 an hour, right? I'll have people that are fighting not just about big possessions in the house, but stupid possessions in the house. I had clients in my office one time, they were fighting not just about the pictures on the wall, the paintings on the wall. They were fighting about the nails holding the paintings on the wall. How many nails can you buy for $350? Those people needed some mental health intervention, seriously. And I'm not saying that derogatorily. If that's what you're fighting about, you're really not fighting about that. There's some other stuff that's going on.
It's been alleviated, that whole issue. You just call 1-800-GOT-JUNK and throw away all
There you go. Well, now I'll tell you, that's something though too. I had this one time happen. It was interesting. And the courts have kind of gotten away from this, but there used to be something called nesting. I don't know if any of you ever heard of that, but it's kind of a weird deal. It's where the child never left the home. Mom was in the home for a week, and then she had to move out and have her own place to live, whether it was her own apartment or with her parents or whatever. Dad, the same thing. Then the week that mom's gone, dad is in that home with the child, and then the next week he has to move out. That used to happen quite a bit. I don't hear of it anymore. And I'll tell you, probably one of the reasons why it kind of goes along that way. I had some clients that were doing that, and mom came home, and her first day was spent cleaning up dad's mess. He had used every fork, every plate, every pot, every pan, all on the counters, in the dishwasher, and mom got PO'd about it, which rightfully so. Instead of spending a day with her kid, she spent a day cleaning up after dad. So she's thinking about it, and she's going, this is only going to happen once. So the next Sunday, dad comes to the house, getting ready to cook dinner. There is no pot, no pan, no plate, no fork, no knife. Okay? And it just escalated from there. So it's that 100 called junk. I mean, mom just cleaned out the place. So now dad's got to scramble to figure out what he's going to do, right? And it just escalated. They just continued to get back and forth at each other. But again, I think that's one of the reasons. There's probably a lot more why they don't do that nesting stuff anymore. And I'm sorry, I got off track here. Let's go back to attorneys. If you've got an attorney, make sure that you're picking your battles carefully, because your battles are financially and emotionally expensive to you and to your kids and to your family. So pick your battles carefully. You don't have to fight about nails on a wall. You don't have to fight about haircuts. You might have to fight about some other things that are a lot more significant. Let me also say this. It's not unusual for people to have parenting differences. That's common. That's not a reason to bring each other to court. The happiest marriages have parenting differences. I mean, two of the biggest, well, I'll say three of them. My wife and I, we've been married, I don't know, I'd ask her, 24 years or somewhere in there. All right. And she'd kill me right now since I couldn't tell you the exact number. But let's say 24 years. Well, we get a divorce almost every year when it's time to put up the Christmas tree. I don't know why, but we do. So now she just waits till I'm out of the house, and then she goes and buys it and puts it up. It's like, oh, man, okay, eliminated that argument. But the other two things that we would periodically argue about and still have disagreements about, money and discipline of our kids. Our kid, we have one child. You know, and I think that's pretty common. And I think the reason why is because we come from different backgrounds. And y'all come from different backgrounds when you get together. And our argument was, hey, you're gonna spend us into the poorhouse here. If you got to cut down on your spending. That would be my argument. And her argument was, Brad, man, you've got spider webs and moths in your wallet. Open it up once in a while, you know? You are the biggest skinflint, and I still tend to be that. I probably have had these, I don't even know how long I've had these pants, a long time, okay? I'm a cheapskate by nature. And I think that's the way I was raised. You know, my parents grew up around the Depression, and they were very thrifty, and I think that was just instilled in me. And her family was done pretty well financially, you know, and so we fight a lot about that. And the other one is discipline. And I was always the heavy in our house, and I kind of resented that at times, because I was always the one, I was always the no. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do this. And my wife is more like, yeah, she can do that. She can do that. And it was probably a pretty good balance for our daughter, you know, kind of a checks and balances system. But those arguments about discipline they can escalate too. It starts from a molehill and builds into a mountain. Well, my argument is, you're going to let her get by with murder. Our kid is like a wonderful kid. She's never done anything horribly wrong. She's made some lapses of judgment, but nothing horribly wrong. And my wife would say, well, you're like a darn prison warden, you know? Let her experience some things, you know? And so parenting differences, I think, are good. And here's why I say that. Your child, every single one of your kids, is different than every single other kid that walks the face of the earth. Why? Because of what you two have brought into that child's life, both genetically and environmentally. The way that you have raised is different than the way mom's raised. The way you have raised is different than the way dad's raised. That's what makes your kid unique and special. So don't let parenting differences trip you up. And I'll tell you, they're going to be speed bumps. Parenting differences can be speed bumps. But that's all you should allow them to be, is a speed bump. Don't let it become a wall. And if you see that it's causing problems, that's when you guys need to get a mediator or a therapist involved to help you navigate whatever that speed bump is that's now getting to be a problem. You know, in that case I was telling you about before, the best thing that this family can do, you know, the one where they were co-parenting well with each other, and then the dad got remarried and now their co-parenting's falling apart, they need some family counseling, is what they need. They need to have somebody who doesn't have a dog in the fight say, stepmom, you got to back off a little bit, okay? Let mom and dad work this out. She can't hear that from me because I'm doing an evaluation on her, and she just thinks I'm totally against her. I'm not totally against her, but I also see that everything was fine until she got involved in this case. So Don't let speed bumps become walls. Don't let parenting differences become walls. Some other issues that can become walls. Changes in jobs sometimes mean changes in schedules, or can mean moves. New boyfriends, new girlfriends, those all can be speed bumps, but it's how you manage them. Again, let's talk about, just for a second, moves, because it's a big one. Almost all of the cases I see are moves. Remember what I said, that a final court order, typically in it, somewhere it says that the child's primary domicile is restricted to Tarrant or a contiguous county. That's as far as that child can move till that, till that child's 18. Well, if you think about even that distance, if one of you lived in far west Parker County and one of you lived in far east Dallas County, that's probably well over 100 miles, I would bet. Now, let's overlay that with the Texas possession schedule. Because in most cases in this building, one or the other of you, it's not always moms that get it, it's not always dads that get it, but typically one or the other of you is going to get what's called the Texas possession schedule. For those, some of you said you know that term. I want to tell you, I'm not going to go into great detail because we could talk about that schedule for the rest of today and tomorrow. I'm going to go over just a little bit of it, skim it. If you're the parent that gets that, it's not unusual for that parent to start getting the child first, third, and fifth weekends, Fridays at 6 p.m. till Sundays at 6 p.m. They also get the child every Thursday, but only during the school year, from 6 to 8 p.m. They get the child every other spring break, half of every Christmas, every other Thanksgiving, and 30 days in the summer. There's more to it than that, but that's the bulk of it. Okay, well, let's just say one of you lives in South Tarrant County and one of you lives in North Tarrant County because one of you moved. Let's say you used to live close to each other, one of you moves. Okay, if you're the parent now that has to get your child Thursdays from 6 to 8, what's the likelihood that you're going to be at that other parent's house at 6, bring your child home, and bring your child back to that other parent at 8 o'clock on Thursdays? Probably not going to happen. Yeah, a lot of people do. And here's the other thing. Not only the distance, but right now, gas is what, $2.15, $2.17 a gallon? Remember when it was pushing over $4 a gallon? A lot of people ended up having to give up their time then too, because it was either put gas in their vehicle or put food on their table or pay their child, whatever it might be, So distance can really have an impact on your possession schedule. If you're that parent that also now gets the child first, third, and fifth weekends, Fridays at 6 o'clock p.m., what's traffic like in the Metroplex, Fridays at 6 o'clock p.m.?
Don't get there until 8, don't get home till 2.
Okay, and I've lived here since 1982. I cannot remember a day in my life that there wasn't some kind of road construction going on here. So it's not just traffic, but you've got the road construction as well. I'm telling you folks, you need to live as close to each other as you can. Now, I had someone write on an evaluation one time, and if I see this, I know who it's from. Brad said we have to live next door to each other. Did I just say that?
No, I'm not unreasonable.
Well, we'll talk about it. Here's the reason I say that. I'm not saying you have to live in a duplex, one on one side and one on the other. I'm not saying you have to live in the same apartment complex, and I'm not saying you have to live across the street from each other. But the closer you live to each other, the easier your child's life becomes. Okay? I mean, driving an hour and a half each way, that's a long drive for a kid, especially if you're having to get, some possession schedules go to Monday morning. You got to get that kid to school Monday morning. What time's that kid got to get up to go to school? Did I say this? I'm sure I did. When it gets to this level, it's not about you anymore. Did I say that? How many times have I said that? A bunch? It's about what's in the best interest of your kids. The closer you live to each other, the easier your child's life becomes. All right. So, don't let moves, job changes, changes in schedules, new boyfriends, new girlfriends, new husbands, new wives, don't let those incidents, those issues become walls. Do your best to make it a speed bump. You know, the people that are the most difficult to me to work with are the ones that follow the letter of the law to the T. I'll have people call me and say, Brad, on page 17, paragraph 3, letter A, he was supposed to be here, or she was supposed to be here at 6 p.m. He got here at 6:10. Well, guess what? Life happens. I can't control a wreck on the freeway. I can't control going out to start my car and the battery's dead. I can't control getting a flat tire on the way there. What I can control is having that other parent call as soon as they know it and say, you know what, I'm on my way. I don't want you sitting here wondering whether I'm coming or not. I'm right here. Here's where I'm at, Beach and 30 right now. I should be there in about 10 more minutes. Okay? If you're no call, no show, you're opening up the door for that other parent to not be restricted to territory contiguous county. Use your time. If you're not using your time, you're opening up the door for the other parent to have a legitimate argument to move away. Okay? Let's talk about getting out of this system. There's two, in my opinion, there's two excellent ways. One is through something called parent coordination. Some of you got the pamphlets. If you don't have it, we're going to pass it out to you on the way out. Our office provides free, no cost, zero cost mediation to folks that are going through this system. How much do we charge you? Free, thank you. Doesn't cost you anything. It comes with one catch. You have to be court ordered into it. Okay, well that blows it for me. There's no way he's going to agree to it. There's no way she's going to agree to it. You know how many cases go through our courts in a year? About 10,000 new cases every year. We've got 14 judges in this building. I don't know what the math turns out on that, but it's ridiculous. If a judge hears you talking about parent coordination or thinks you're thinking about it, you know, because judges have ESP, they will order you into it. If you have an attorney, or even if you don't have an attorney and you want to try it, you got to get the judge to sign a court order. Judges sign those court orders every day because they want you out of their courtroom. And the other thing is, they want you in control of the outcome. This is the only time, folks, that you have control of the outcome. If you two continue on the route you're going right now, here's what happens. You sit in a courtroom with a judge who doesn't know the whole story, will never know the whole story, doesn't love you, doesn't love the other parent, doesn't love your children. That's who's making the most important decision of your life. In parent coordination, access facilitation, you know who makes the decisions? Not me, not your attorneys, not a judge. The people that made the child, that know the whole story, love their child the most. Those are the people that make the decisions. I'm telling you, if you have not tried access coordination, you absolutely should give that a try. And you can actually typically put your custody evaluation on hold temporarily to give that a try. If you've paid money for your custody evaluation but you haven't gone in for an interview yet, you try parenting coordination, you get an agreement. As soon as we get a final order that you're out of the system, you get your money back, every penny of it that you spent on your custody evaluation. And you're out of this system. And who made the decision about their kids? You guys did. I will tell you, parenting coordination is harder than going to court. It's less expensive, but it's harder. You know why? In court, you sling mud. The other side slings mud, and the judge determines what sticks. What's the likelihood of you two being able to work very well with each other after that hearing? After you've testified in public, in front of God, under oath, what a horrible husband and dad he's been, and what a horrible wife and mom she's been. You know? So, I'm sorry, what? Okay. Well, see, and that's probably why you're here. So what we need to be doing instead is learning how to communicate with each other appropriately. And that's one of the things that we do in our office, is get you two talking to each other, who, what, when, where, and why, focusing on the kids. And what I have found is if we can get that one little piece of the, two pieces of the puzzle into place, when's kid going to be here? When's kid going to be here? How can you two better communicate with each other? It's amazing how many other pieces of that puzzle fall into place. So if you have tried it and it didn't work, give it some time, pay a few more attorney bills, call us back and say, you know what, I'm tired of paying all these bills, let's give this another shot. If you haven't tried it, I absolutely tell you it's the number one thing you should try first. Parenting coordination. It's free. We typically do not have your attorneys there because what we draw up is not a legal mumbo-jumbo document that you're legally bound to. We draw up a piece of paper that's in plain English, no legal terms, helps you both understand when the child's going to be with you and when the child's going to be with you. It's nothing more than a written handshake between the two of you, and it doesn't become a legal document till one of you or one of your attorneys brings it to court and the judge signs it. Okay? It's a great, great, great way to do it. But some of you, I'm like this, feel like, well, you get what you pay for. If you're not paying for anything, you're not going to get much. Okay, you have the right to feel that way. Second option is this. If you don't want to use our office, you can use a private mediator. And there are a bunch of really good private mediators in Tarrant County. Most of them are either family law attorneys or retired family law judges, so they know their stuff. They do things a little bit differently. They prefer that your attorneys are present. So now you're paying your attorney's fees plus half of the mediator's fees. It can get a little pricey, but I'll tell you what, if you're able to get an agreement there, it's still cheaper than if you continue to litigate with each other, okay? So, none of you can leave the room today saying, I don't know how to get out of this system. I've given you two keys. You folks got to put those keys in the lock and turn the lock. Give it a try. If you have not tried it, absolutely give it a try. If you've tried it and you've just hit a brick wall, then you're going to have to go through that custody evaluation. And for those of you that have been ordered into a custody evaluation, as you're leaving today, I need everyone, and let me get out there first, but I need everyone to leave out of these doors. I need you to fill out your evaluations. You can leave them on your chair. You can put them up here, whatever you want, because I've memorized where all of you sit. So if you leave me a bad one, I'll know who. No, I'm kidding. But if you're in a custody evaluation, today you pick up your personal data form. You pick one up for yourself, any other adult living in your home, or if you're in a significant dating relationship with someone outside the home, you need to pick one up for those people. Let me give you one other clue that Diane may or may not have said. When you come in for your interview for your custody evaluation, if you're sitting in my lobby filling out your form, you probably already lost. Okay? These take a lot of time to fill out. And if you're putting 10 minutes worth of thought and effort into it, that shows me how much you're really wanting primary custody of your kids. You take these forms home, you fill them out, they're fully completed, and you bring them back in. When it asks for references on there, I don't want a name and a telephone number, I want an address. I send those people a questionnaire to fill out. Put time and effort into these forms. Don't be filling them out in the last minute in my office, okay? I appreciate, yes sir?
Is that the same for court services?
Same thing,
We're gonna have it-
yes. You need to pick one, thank you. Yes, sir. No, you got to fill out some paperwork in my office, but you don't have to fill out one of those. Okay? All right, I appreciate your time. Fill out the evaluations and then head out this way.